Chapter 6. Crystal's Warning. Lucas was woken early the next Saturday morning by his mobile ringing. He rolled over with a groan, leaning over the rails of his bunk bed. "Reuben?" His brother groaned in the bed below, shifting in his sleep. "Reuben, can you pass my phone?" Reuben did so, moving in autopilot. Now free from his cast, taken off the night before, he raised himself up easily and took the mobile from the bedside table. He handed it to Lucas. His injury had healed by now also. The deep gashes that had been in his side were gone. Only faint scars remained. Reuben collapsed back on his bed and went back to sleep as Lucas flipped the mobile open, answering the call. "Yes, Drake? Hey, I'm so glad you answered your phone," Drake sang merrily back. "Are you still in bed? What do you want?" "I was just wondering why we hadn't met up in so long. We haven't practiced our magic in ages. Do you have a new girl in your life or something?" "Kind of," Lucas replied flatly. "Really?" Drake answered in surprise, clearly not expecting that kind of answer. "Did you split with Cian? You know she's apparently expecting you to visit her tomorrow." "No," Lucas said, defensively now. "I didn't split with her. I've found another guardian." "Really?" Jake repeated. "You mean you found a new guardian and you didn't tell me?" "She's a little shy." "I don't care. I want to meet her. Is she cute?" "Drake." "When can I meet her?" "Drake." "I know. I'll see you at your place. Be there in about an hour." "Drake." "Although an hour and a half. I'll see you soon. Bye." And he hung up. Lucas sighed, handing the mobile back to Reuben in the bed below him. "He's getting more and more like Lorelei by the day." "Was that Drake?" Reuben asked, opening his eyes and taking the mobile. "Yeah," Lucas answered. "He'll be around here soon. He wants to meet Ebony." "Oh," Reuben said, turning over. "Wake me up in 10 minutes." "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Ebony asked nervously, holding her hands before her and scratching at her palms nervously. "Don't worry," Lucas smiled reassuringly at her as she gave him a worried look. "Drake is a nice guy. I'm sure you two will get along fine." "But what if he doesn't see me?" "He's a guardian," Lucas said. "Like me, like Reuben, of course he will see you." "Okay," Ebony said, looking down. "If you say so." Pokey flew through the air between them. Descending, he placed himself into her arms and stared at Lucas in a way that would have been a glare had the toy been able to do so. It was shortly after that there came a knock at the door and Drake entered. "Hello," he said to the brothers, glancing at one and the other. Then he looked at Ebony, his face breaking into a smile. "So you must be the new guardian that Lucas has found." He strode across the room, weaving his way around the coffee table and seating himself next to Ebony upon the sofa. "My name is Drake," he said, extending a hand. "What's your name?" "Ebony," she replied, beaming back at him. "You can see me?" "See you?" Drake echoed, raising an eyebrow in confusion. "Of course I can see you. Ebony is having trouble with being noticed," Lucas explained to Drake. "She says that people don't see her." He glanced at Ebony. "Isn't that right?" "It is, I'm afraid," she said, bowing her head shyly. "Most people seem to look right through me. Even my foster parents completely ignore me now." "That's terrible," Drake said. "It's okay," Ebony replied, looking up at Lucas. "I've been feeling much better since I met Lucas. And Reuben," she said, glancing at him. "I've never had such wonderful company before. I've never met anyone before who understands magic like they do." Drake frowned at her, biting his lip, and thought, "I've not heard of a guardian being unseen unless by choice. How long has this been happening?" "Only recently," she said, "in the last few months or so." "That is odd," Drake mused, scratching his chin. "Do you use magic often?" "Very rarely," Ebony said, "and only in small amounts." Drake hummed thoughtfully. "You know, I saw several aberrants on my way here," he digressed, speaking to the brothers. "It was very odd. The closer to the flats I got, the more often I saw them. I must have seen about 6. "They are drawn to me," Ebony said. "Eh?" "The aberrants," she explained. "They are drawn to my powers. I don't know why. It's just always been that way. It's been getting worse lately, though." "Drawn to you?" Lucas mumbled. Lucas thought back to that day when they first met. He remembered then seeing an aberrant nearby, just before he saw Ebony. He and Reuben had also seen several near their home, since Ebony first started living with them. He understood now. Pokey then made a move beside her, sitting up and facing this new stranger. Drake's attention immediately snapped to the toy. Did I just see that move? He asked the room. Ebony lifted the toy, sitting it on her lap, and for the moment the talk about aberrants was forgotten. This is Pokey, Ebony explained. I use magic to make him come to life. He keeps me company. I made him when I was feeling lonely. I make her happy, Pokey said, and no one is taking her away from me. Drake gave an uncertain glance towards Lucas. He gets a bit jealous, Lucas shrugged lazily. Reuben looked on in silence. I have an idea, Drake suddenly declared. Why don't we invite over Jacob and Lorelei? That would be fun, wouldn't it? Only if Lorelei doesn't come, Lucas droned. Why do you want them to come over? Reuben asked. Well, Drake wagged a finger at Reuben knowingly. One is a guardian and the other isn't. Maybe we can find out what's happening to you, he said, turning to Ebony. I'll just give them a call. He left the room quickly, taking out his mobile as he did so. Lucas glanced sideways at Ebony. What do you think of him? She shrugged. He seems nice. I told you two would get along. Ebony shuffled in her seat, fiddling nervously with the hem of her skirt. Pokey was by her side, standing with his front feet leaning against her as if to comfort. Are you sure I'm ready for this? She asked Lucas. Lucas cocked his head at her. They're not going to hurt you. Drake returned a moment later. They'll be here shortly, he declared. They're on their way right now. Not long after that there came another knock at the door, and Lucas made his way towards it. Reuben, picking up some of Ebony's tension, sat rigid in his seat. Drake sat back in his chair, thoroughly relaxed, tapping his foot casually. The door was opened, and in came a beaming Lorelei and a cautious looking Jacob. Ah, hey, Lorelei said, bounding in. It's so great to see you three. It's been ages. Drake and Reuben lifted their heads at them, smiling and nodding in acknowledgement. Jacob entered the room after her, immediately noticing the unfamiliar figure of Ebony. Lucas closed the door behind them. Hey, Jacob. Lucas nodded to him. Did you enjoy your holiday? Oh, so now you're ignoring me, Lorelei protested loudly, turning to Lucas with a glare and her hands on her hips. Why are you always so mean to me? Actually, I'm surprised you invited me over. I thought you didn't like me. I don't, Lucas said flatly. She made a face at him, sticking her tongue out and showing him the palm of her hand. If you don't have anything nice to say, then I'm not going to listen to you, she said, turning away from him. So how are you guys? She sang, looking from Reuben to Drake. I see you have your cast off, Reuben. That must have been nice for you. And Drake, how have you been? Drake glanced sideways at Ebony, who sat silently next to him. She gave him a worried look. Guys, Jacob spoke. You didn't tell me you had company. This is Ebony, Drake introduced, looking back at Jacob and Lorelei. She's a guardian. A guardian? Jacob repeated, staring at the girl dressed all in black. He smiled uncertainly, quiet and reserved when it came to strangers. Hello, he said. Jacob hesitated then, as he noticed the toy hovering in the air beside Ebony. It cocked its head at him, but did not speak. My name is Jacob, he said to Ebony. We all go to college together. I'm Ebony, she replied, hunching her shoulders and looking down at her lap, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. That's a pretty name, Jacob replied. Is that a stone? Actually, it's a wood, Ebony smiled. You know, I should thank you, Drake, Lorelei said to him, completely ignoring Ebony and making no indication that she had noticed her existence at all. I was so mad at first when you left me with Diz and Adrian, but I'm not mad anymore. In fact, we seem to be getting along quite well. That's strange, Lucas mumbled, glancing at the back of Lorelei's head as she launched into a full speech about all the wonderful things she and the brothers Diz and Adrian had gotten up to since they first met. Not only does she seem to be able to see you, he said to Ebony, she seems to be unable to hear any reference to you. I told you, Ebony mumbled sadly. What are you guys talking about? Jacob frowned at Lucas. The reason we invited you, Reuben explained to Jacob, is because we wanted to know if you could see Ebony and if Lorelei could see her too. Lorelei didn't seem to have noticed you, Jacob said to Ebony, furrowing his brow in confusion and glancing at Lorelei as she rambled on, speaking to Drake, who smiled back at her, feigning interest. I know, Ebony sighed. It's why I can't live with my foster parents anymore. That's terrible, Jacob sympathized. I know, Ebony sighed again, resting her chin on the ball of her hand. It didn't used to be this bad, but now it seems that the only people who can even notice me anymore are guardians. I've never heard of that happening before, Jacob mused. Neither have we, Lucas added. They fell silent then, watching Lorelei as she continued to drone on and on to Drake about the street dancing brothers. Drake appeared to be trying his best to listen, but at this point his eyes had glazed over. Lucas turned from the room, drifting into the kitchen. Reuben followed after her as Jacob struck up a conversation with Ebony. The brothers left the room to blurred conversation that faded into white noise. Lucas let out a deep and weary breath, leaning forwards on the kitchen counter and staring vacantly out the window. "Are you all right?" Reuben asked him.